So I'll talk about Stop Diabetes Foundation for a bit. It's a registered charity in Brampton, and our focus is Peel region, so it's a small focus. Of course, we have Diabetes Canada, and we are really wonderful collaboration on this project with them as well. Diabetes Canada is an organization that covers the whole breadth of Canada, and so we are really fortunate to have this collaboration with them. About Stop Diabetes Foundation, we have two missions. The first mission is to talk about prevention of diabetes. So as you can see, mission statement number 1 is to reduce the burden of type 2 diabetes. That's the diabetes that happens mostly in older people and is a majority of diabetes in this area that we live in. And how do we do that? Is by providing accurate information in easy to understand language as well. So that's how we do it. And focus is lifestyle, right? Behavior changes, so diet and exercise. Second mission statement is for people living with diabetes. We want to prevent complications, and so that we can help them live long lives without any complications or adverse effects, right? And again, the message is simple, talking about lifestyle as well as the right pharmacotherapy so that we can prevent complications, right? And so that's our two mission statements. And as I said, we focus on Peel region, which if you can see on the map here, is highlighted by the blue borders. So that Peel region has this dubious distinction and is called the capital of diabetes in Ontario. And the reason for saying that is, according to the Peel Atlas and according to data Ontario-wide, that Peel has the highest burden of diabetes in the whole of Ontario. This is old data. This is data from 2007 that was used for this. And the thought is that maybe this has even grown further. So according to this data in 2007, about 1 in 7 adults in Peel region have diabetes. And it's thought maybe it's changed to 1 in 6 by this time as well. So our goal from Stop Diabetes Foundation is simple, what we call SDF Vision 2020. SDF stands for Stop Diabetes Foundation, and our vision is very clear, 2020 vision. And what is that? To remove that number 1 tag. We want to reduce the burden of diabetes in this Peel region by spreading knowledge, scientifically accurate information, removing myths, and by educating people how to prevent diabetes by leading a healthier lifestyle. And how do we do that, right? So it's a big ask. Of course, we are a very small organization. We are made up of about 50 healthcare providers, all of them Canadian certified healthcare providers. So they're doctors, they're dietitians, they're nurses, they're pharmacists. There are many students who are still studying in these healthcare fields as well. So all of these healthcare providers are working during the day. Just like me, I see patients in my clinic. But then in the evenings or on the weekends, we come out and try to educate people, our community, our big family, right? So that's what we try to come out towards and try to educate people to try and reduce this burden of diabetes and also diabetes complications in people who have or who are living with diabetes as well. So with this professional board, as I said, we sit in our clinics, but rather than just waiting for more people to get diabetes, what we want to do is spread awareness about how to prevent this disease. And that's the only reason, that is the only reason for holding such events. And we've been holding these events for the last 4 years or so, and we've tried to reach out to people in our area. And that's the only reason we reach out for media as well. We have no training, we have no intentions of being big in media or anything. And the only intention is to spread awareness, and media is wonderful. And we really thank all the media partners who are here today to support the cause as well. Like always, we really appreciate you being here. Or the second last part, we've also been very fortunate to have religious support for this initiative. It's very, very important to involve our religious scholars, religious leaders. make sure we get their blessings, make sure that that they help guide us as to the correct way of interpreting. So first of all, maybe you could introduce yourself, your name, and where your origin is. Where were you born?
Good evening, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Pinter. I am diabetes. I am diabetic since 1983, about 35 years ago, and I'm still sitting in front of you.
How old are you, sir?
I am 78, but 4 months shy from 79.
All right, so 79 almost, and 35 years of diabetes almost, right? And about Ramadan, have you been fasting every one of those 35 years?
All my life, I never miss a fast, because this is from the Creator. You know, He asked us to fast. He asked the people before us, the Jewish people and the Christian. Everybody was fasting. So when He says something to do it, so it's good for us.
So you've been fasting every one of those years, 78 years, right?
Yeah.
And so when you developed diabetes, or when you were diagnosed with diabetes,
yes,
before developing diabetes and after developing diabetes, right, were there any challenges that you felt during fasting after you were diagnosed with diabetes? Were there any problems?
I had a problem in the beginning when I found out, that I have a diabetes. I cried too, but later on I tried to I fast all my life. Before I was diagnosed for diabetes, and after, I always fast.
And you haven't faced any problems after?
No,
okay.
I never have a problem.
Do you take insulin or oral medications only? Do you take insulin?
Okay.
Do you take insulin?
Yeah, I took insulin for 16 years.
16 years?
Yes, and it was very difficult because I had to take 2-3 times a day. And and then after 16 years, my wife requested our physician to please put him on the medication. So the doctor did some tests and stuff, and then he came up, he checked it, and he came up with this, that he put me on some medication, and then he said, don't take this insulin anymore.
Right. So with insulin, during fasting, have you felt any challenges, any problems at all?
In this 35 years, I have 3 times I have the doctor called reaction.
Low sugar reactions?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what it happened. I remember that. It was during that insulin time. But after that, I learned more about this, and with the help of my doctor, I always listen to him, and I believe the doctors are the best people, who help human, who spend all life, who spend their life to make the other people's life.
Were you born in Canada, or were you born outside Canada, sir?
No, I was born in India.
Okay.
Yeah, which was later on we moved from Amritsar to Multan in Pakistan.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
During the partition, probably.
Yeah.
And when did you arrive in Canada?
About 46 years ago.
45 years ago.
Yeah.
Fasting in India or Pakistan versus fasting in Canada.
Yeah.
How is it different? What are the differences?
Well, Pakistan has a shorter fasting day, but over here, I lived in Alberta, and Alberta has 19 hours. And in summer, I never miss that. I just fast for 19 hours. And I was working in an oil company, and over there was very hot, but I never felt that I should quit or something. No. because this is from the Lord, from God Almighty. I believe 100% this has benefit for us.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. Maybe I'll ask you to introduce one by one. So Taisir, first you.
Hello, my name is Stacy Abu Hassan. I'm an endocrinologist from Windsor.
Hello, my name is Hasnan Khandwala. I'm an endocrinologist in Etobicoke.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Tayyab Khan. I'm an endocrinologist here in Oakville.
First of all, thank you so much, you guys, for being a part of this initiative and making sure that we come up with, evidence-based guidance around this topic. As Peter Sr. mentioned, right, Canada, we're proud that it's such a multicultural, multi-diverse, ethnic background society in our country, and it's part of our constitution as well. In this diverse country, we have different religions, and it's great that we respect all the religious ceremonies, and of course, Ramadan being the pillar of Islam is very much cherished here. Now, in Canada, we've not had a guideline until now or recommendations around Ramadan. So you can say this is the first attempt to come up with a consensus around this. I really thank all the collaboration that we've had over the past few months. So maybe I'll start with asking questions one by one, right? So I'll ask Taisir. Taisir, you've been working on this for a number of years in the area of Windsor. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
When I was a child, my mom's diabetic, and she had diabetes. She was fasting, and she was on insulin. And she'd always have trouble during Ramadan in terms of having low blood sugars, because she'd go a long time without eating. Then she'd have low blood sugars because of her insulin, and then afterwards they stop her insulin and all her medication, then she'll have high sugars. So she struggled a lot during Ramadan, and then fortunately I had the opportunity to become an endocrinologist, and now that I'm sort of in a position to sort of help more people, I've sort of helped not only my mother, but other people in our communities. We set up in the mosque, we have every year we have a community-based program where you have myself, a nurse educator, and other physicians talking to people about Ramadan and what they can do to make it safe for them to fast during Ramadan. We also do programs in terms of helping other physicians who are not familiar with Ramadan, to sort of educate them on some of the barriers that people have during fasting and what they can do to sort of help them out.
Excellent. And Hasnan, maybe about your experience with people who intend to fast. What are some of the challenges that you've, as a physician from that ethnic background, and understanding even, it's a different thing if you're not from that background, it's a lot more challenging. But even from that background, have you faced more challenges in Canada, let's say? Let's compare that to, say, Middle East or Pakistan.
Right. I think one of the biggest things is, I guess when I moved to Canada, this was in 2000, and we moved in December in Saskatoon, and it was Ramadan at that time, and it was great because it's like it was from almost 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. Compared to now in the summers, it's going to be almost 18 hours of fasting. So I think that's one of the biggest differences, as Mr. Pinter also mentioned, which makes it a little bit more challenging. So in terms of patient care and patient experiences, we at our clinic have started, and again, Gagan takes the credit for it, a pre-Ramadan workshop where patients are invited to come, and we give them tips and education on how to prepare themselves. It is also important to obviously see their physician, be it their family physician or the endocrinologist, to make sure that it's safe for them to fast, and any medications and so forth are changed accordingly, because so that they don't end up with any complications from either high blood sugar or low blood sugar, which can be quite serious.
So Canada has particular challenges given the variability in the time for fasting. So that's why these guidelines, they tend to complement the ones that were presented by the International Diabetes Foundation. and sort of build on those guidelines, keeping in mind the Canadian variability as well as the medications that we tend to use here. Unfortunately, most of the evidence is not of very high quality. So, we do have to keep that in mind. But I think what we were able to do over the past couple of months is to sort of consolidate all the information that was there and critique it, as a group, and come up with basically consensus, which was unanimous in all the cases, in regards to, how we would grade them from basically A to D, with A being the highest grade and D being, based on no evidence but based on experience as well as personal opinions. So, this is the first actually North American effort in this regard. There were position statements by the American Diabetes Association previously, but not to the extent as we went through. But these will serve as a stepping stone for carrying out further research in this area, so that we can educate our respective communities, in terms of fasting safely in Ramadan.
Yeah, very, very important. So maybe I'll come back to you, Hasnan, and talk specifically about insulin, because many people living with diabetes, type 2 diabetes or type 1, they need insulin in type 1 for sure, but even with type 2, over time, the need for insulin arises, right? And insulin, of course, hypoglycemia or low sugar reactions, as Mr. Pinter pointed out, is one of the side effects of insulin. So in this guideline or in your experience, would you say that we've come up with a consensus that can help guide the physicians and their diabetes teams?
Sure. So yes, as you mentioned, I was given the task of reviewing the literature on insulin use by individuals with diabetes who fasted and try and come up with some recommendations. Insulin, as you know, is one of the most potent medications to reduce blood sugar levels. So typically, patients who take insulin often have had diabetes for a longer duration of time, and I don't want to use the word complicated, but have a little bit more advanced diabetes in a lot of cases. And insulin use, I think, poses some more challenges if they fast, let's say, compared to somebody who has diabetes and just is controlling the diabetes with diet or with one oral tablet. So the concerns with insulin mostly would be, number one, as you mentioned, was hypoglycemia or low blood sugar, because if they take their insulin and if they fast for several hours, particularly if it's a very long fast, then obviously the risk is that their blood sugar would go down. They would get hypoglycemic, which can be a very dangerous thing potentially, and can also lead to coma and seizures if not corrected in time. On the other hand, if they don't take insulin because of concerns about low blood sugar, they can end up the opposite, hyperglycemia or high blood sugars, which again has its own sets of problems. So I think the guidelines recommend that individuals who take insulin, particularly if they are on more than one shot of insulin, are considered to be at a higher risk of potentially developing complications while they fast. And it is very important that they meet with their physicians or healthcare providers prior to Ramadan to make sure that it's safe for them to fast. And what we've tried to do is looked at the literature and trying to come up with some recommendations. And again, the object of this is not to go into details, but there are different kinds of insulins. Some patients need to take insulin once a day. Some patients need to take insulin 2, 3, 4 times a day. So we have come up with some recommendations to see whether it's safe for them to fast. If the insulin that they're on needs to be changed before Ramadan, both in terms of the kind of insulin, and then more importantly, of course, is how much dose do they need to reduce, and the timing of the insulin. So those are some of the things that we've looked at the literature and have come up with some recommendations in our guidelines.
Excellent, thank you. And Taisir, so you were assigned the non-insulin therapies in type 2 diabetes, and you've done a fabulous job on making sure that we have evidence-based, because there's more studies that maybe are applicable in this non-insulin therapies or treatments. In general, many of the non-insulin therapies may be safer, but there are some caveats, there are some nuances, there are some challenges or problems that we need to pay attention to, even in non-insulin therapies or people who take oral medications as well. Can you elaborate on this piece, please?
So right now it's a great time to be in diabetes and being treated for diabetes because there's so much new medications out there. And so the majority of these medications are focused on helping to lower your blood sugars, help you lose weight, but more importantly, less risk for hypoglycemia or less risk for low blood sugars. And so that's what's been the focus for most of diabetes care outside of Ramadan. During Ramadan, we're doing the same thing. We're trying to focus on not having low blood sugar so people can fast safely. So the vast majority of the medications are safe for that. There's one group of medication, sulfonylureas, or in the classes dimicron or glycoside. These medications, they can cause low blood sugars, and so we have to sort of pay attention and adjust these medications. Another class of medication that's sort of newer, and people are more and more patients are becoming on these, are what we call SGLT2 inhibitors. These medications, the way that they work is they sort of help you control your sugars by having you pee out the extra sugar that you have in your system, which is a great way of losing weight, controlling your blood sugars with no risk for low blood sugars. Another class of medication that's sort of, again, becoming popular are the injectable, what we call incretin-based therapies, the GLP-1 agonists. And these are injectables, and again, they're great medications. They control your blood sugars, they help you lose weight, and there's no or low risk for hypoglycemia. But one of the biggest side effects of this medication is nausea. And already in Ramadan, you're going a long time without eating, and you don't want this issue to happen during Ramadan, so we don't recommend to start this medication prior to Ramadan or during Ramadan. So most medications are safe for you to continue, and of course you'll get advice from your family physician or from your endocrinologist in terms of which ones are safe and which ones aren't. But the specific medications sometimes have to be addressed during Ramadan.
As you mentioned, this position statement or the consensus with the grading will hopefully help the diabetes teams out there in Ontario, in Canada, as well as the doctors who who are faced with this as well. Maybe I'll finish off by saying one of the key things that is coming out of this consensus statement is that people should seek medical advice, or their diabetes team, they should seek their advice at least 1 to 3 months before actually the Ramadan fasting happens. As you said, some of these medications, if they've been on these medications for a while and they're tolerating it, there's no problem with continuing with these medications. But what we don't need to happen is, what we want to avoid is, starting these medications right before Ramadan or the day of the Ramadan fasting, and that can cause problems, right? So seeking advice 1 to 3 months before actual Ramadan starts, I think is one of the key messages. The second key message, which you all so wonderfully stated already, is safety first, right? So there is a sense of this that we want to be safe in terms of helping people perform their religious fasting while making sure that they stay healthy and safe as well. So that's the key message as well. And maybe we'll also, when this position statement comes out, we'll also talk about when to break the fast as well. When is the right time? If somebody is, God forbid, having a low blood sugar, when to break that fast would be another thing to talk about. So thank you so much for all three of you to join us here and for the collaboration. There's a lot of work ahead, so let's keep working together on this. Thank you.